Every person alive today carries a tiny genetic link to one ancient woman. We do not know her name, we do not know what she looked like. No grave, tool, or settlement can be confidently connected to her. She was not a queen, a warrior, or a religious figure, yet part of her genetic inheritance survive inside billions of people. Scientists call her Mitochondrial Eve. The name sounds as though she was the first woman in history. She was not. She lived among many other men and women, all of whom had their own families and descendants. What made her unusual was something far more specific. Every person alive today inherited a particular type of genetic material through a chain of mothers that eventually leads back to her. Her story is therefore not about first human woman, it is about one family line that survived while countless others disappeared. But how could scientists possibly trace humanity back to someone who had lived more than 100,000 years ago? The answer was hidden inside ourselves. Welcome to History Unpacked. If you enjoy the content, consider subscribing. We post every week and we welcome any feedback. Inside nearly every cell in the human body are tiny structures called mitochondria. Their main job is to help provide energy for the cell. Mitochondria also contain a small amount of their own genetic material, known as mitochondrial DNA. Most of our DNA comes from both parents. Mitochondrial DNA is different. It is passed almost entirely from a mother to her children. Both sons and daughters inherit it, but only daughters normally pass it to the next generation. This creates a direct chain through mothers. You received your mitochondrial DNA from your mother. She received hers from her mother. Your grandmother received hers from her own mother. The chain continues backwards through thousands of generations. Over time, tiny changes appeared in mitochondrial DNA. These changes acted like markers, allowing scientists to compare people from different parts of the world. The more similar two people's mitochondrial DNA was, the more recently their maternal lines shared an ancestor. By following these genetic markers backwards, researchers realized that all surviving lines eventually met, and they appeared to meet in Africa. During the 1980s, scientists Rebecca Cann, Mark Stoneking, and Alan Wilson studied mitochondrial DNA from people across the world. Their famous research was published in 1987. They compared samples from 147 people belonging to several different populations. The researchers then created something similar to a family tree. Instead of using names, birth records, or family documents, they used small differences in mitochondrial DNA. Some branches of the tree were relatively recent, others stretched much further into the past. The deepest and most varied branches were found amongst African populations. This suggested that the oldest surviving maternal lines had developed in Africa. While the researchers traced all the branches backwards, they reached one shared maternal ancestor. They estimated that she had lived roughly 200,000 years ago. Later studies produced different estimates, often placing her somewhere between approximately 100,000 and 200,000 years ago. The precise date still remains uncertain. The important point is that the surviving mitochondrial lines of every living human appear to share an ancient African origin. The discovery attracted enormous attention. However, the name given to this woman soon created one of the greatest misunderstandings in modern genetics. The unknown woman became known as Mitochondrial Eve. The name was inspired by Eve from the biblical book of Genesis. It was memorable, dramatic, and easy for the public to understand. But it was also misleading. Mitochondrial Eve was not the first woman, and she was not the only woman alive. She did not suddenly appear as the mother of the entire human population. She lived amongst many other people, and those people also have descendants alive today. The difference is that their direct maternal lines eventually came to an end. So imagine an ancient woman who had several sons but no daughters. Her sons might have children, and her wider family could continue for thousands of years. However, because sons do not normally pass on mitochondrial DNA, her direct mitochondrial line would end. Now imagine another woman who had a daughter. That daughter also had a daughter. The pattern continued generation after generation. that woman's mitochondrial line survived. Across an enormous period of time, countless maternal lines disappeared through chance. Some women had no children, others had only sons. Some daughters died before having children of their own. Populations were also destroyed by disease, famine, conflict, and environmental change. Eventually, the maternal lines of everyone alive today narrowed down to one surviving point. But this does not mean that Mitochondrial Eve was humanity's only important female ancestor. In fact, our true family tree is far more complicated. Every living person has an enormous number of ancestors. 2 parents become 4 grandparents. 4 become 8 great-grandparents. As we travel backwards through time, the number of possible ancestors grows rapidly. Eventually, family lines begin to cross and overlap. A woman living during the time of Mitochondrial Eve might still be an ancestor of millions of people today. Her direct maternal line may have disappeared, but other parts of her family could have survived through sons, grandsons, and later descendants. Mitochondrial Eve is therefore only one narrow line through the human family tree. She represents the chain running from mother to daughter. Other sections of our DNA follow different paths. Some came through fathers, some passed between sons and daughters in countless combinations. This is why Mitochondrial Eve should not be imagined as the mother of everyone else alive during her time. She was simply the woman whose mitochondrial line happened to survive in every living person. It was chance, not status, that made her important, and even her position in the family tree is not permanent. Mitochondrial Eve is not a fixed title belonging forever to one individual. She is defined by the people who are alive today. Imagine that several ancient maternal lines still survive in the modern world. If one of these lines ends in the future because its last female carrier has no daughters, the remaining lines would share a more recent common ancestor. The identity of Mitochondrial Eve could then move forward in time. She is therefore best understood as a position in a family tree. She was not chosen, she did not belong to a unique or superior group, her line simply survived. New discoveries can also change scientific estimates. If researchers found a living population with a previously unknown and very ancient mitochondrial line, it might move the estimated common ancestor even further back in time. Ancient human remains can also help scientists understand migration and mutation rates. However, an extinct mitochondrial line does not become part of the direct ancestry of living mitochondrial DNA simply because scientists discover it. The idea of Mitochondrial Eve is entirely connected to people alive now, and her African origin became important in a much larger debate. Where did modern humans come from? For much of the 20th century, scientists debated the origins of Homo sapiens. One theory suggested that early human populations spread across Africa, Europe, and Asia, and gradually developed into modern humans in several regions. Another argued that modern humans appeared more recently in Africa before spreading across the rest of the world. The mitochondrial evidence strongly supported an African origin. African populations contained the greatest variety of mitochondrial DNA. This usually suggests a deeper and longer history. Populations outside Africa carried only part of that wider diversity. The pattern indicated that a group of modern humans had left Africa and expanded into other regions. For a time, this is sometimes described as simple replacement. Modern humans left Africa and replaced older human groups. Later genetic discoveries showed that the story was not so clean. As modern humans moved through Europe and Asia, they encountered other human populations, including Neanderthals and Denisovans. They did not always replace them without contact. Sometimes they had children with them. Many people living today still carry small amounts of Neanderthal or Denisovian DNA. However, no known Neanderthal or Denisovian mitochondrial line survives amongst modern humans. Their wider genetic legacy remained. Their direct maternal lines did not, and mitochondrial DNA began revealing not only where humans originated, but where they traveled next. As people moved across the world, small changes appeared in their mitochondrial DNA. These changes created different branches known as haplogroups. A haplogroup is essentially a large maternal family branch. Some branches are common in Africa, others are strongly associated with Europe, Asia, the Americas, or the Pacific. By studying these patterns, researchers can reconstruct ancient migration routes. The oldest surviving mitochondrial branches are found in Africa. Later branches spread beyond the continent. Some moved into the Middle East, some traveled deeper into Asia. Further groups reached Europe, Australia, and eventually the Americas. Mitochondrial DNA cannot provide a complete map of human migration. It can only follow one maternal line. However, when combined with archaeology, fossils, and other forms of DNA, it becomes extremely useful. It has helped scientists examine how ancient populations expanded, became isolated, and mixed with neighboring groups. It has also helped reveal the human history that really a series of simple movements. People separated, reunited, vanished, and returned. Entire populations left only faint genetic traces behind. Yet the same maternal thread continued through them all. There is also a male version of this story, and it is called another major misunderstanding. Scientists can also trace a direct male line through the Y chromosome. The Y chromosome normally passes from father to son. By comparing Y chromosomes amongst living men, researchers can trace them back to a shared paternal ancestor. He is commonly called Y chromosomal Adam. The names Adam and Eve create an obvious image, a man and a woman living together as the first human couple, but this is not what the science suggests. Mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal Adam may have lived thousands of years apart. They may have lived in completely different regions. They almost certainly belonged to larger populations. They did not meet, marry, or have children together. They represent two different lines. Mitochondrial Eve is traced through mothers. Y chromosomal Adam is traced through fathers and sons. Other parts of our DNA would lead to different common ancestors at different points in time. Humanity did not descend from one isolated couple living alone. Our ancestry comes from large, connected, and constantly changing populations. The scientific names were useful, but they also created a myth that researchers have spent decades trying to correct. Even today, there are important limits to what mitochondrial Eve can tell us. Mitochondrial DNA is a powerful source of evidence, but it does not reveal everything. Scientists must estimate how quickly genetic changes occur. Different estimates can produce different dates. Ancient populations also moved and mixed in complicated ways. A simple family tree cannot always represent that complexity. Another problem is sampling. Early studies included relatively small numbers of people. Many regions, particularly within Africa, were poorly represented. Modern research uses thousands of complete mitochondrial sequences, creating a much more detailed picture. However, gaps still remain. Mitochondrial DNA also represents only one line amongst millions of possible family connections. It cannot tell us mitochondrial Eve's name, or her language, or the people that she knew. It cannot tell us exactly where she lived or what happened to her. She probably lived as one member of a small African population. She may have gathered food, raised children, moved through a landscape that would be almost unrecognizable today. There would have been nothing to show that her descendants would carry her mitochondrial DNA across the entire world. Her survival wasn't planned. It depended on daughter after daughter continuing the line. For more than 100,000 years, that chain remained unbroken. Kingdoms rose and fell. Human populations crossed deserts, mountains, and oceans. Other maternal lines vanished. Hers survived. Mitochondrial Eve was not the first woman. She was not the only woman, and she was not the mother of the entire human species. She was something quieter but no less remarkable. She was the woman standing at the point where every surviving maternal line eventually becomes one.